Good morning or good afternoon. Today we'll be recording a video on Quizzette 813. As always, make sure you write your last name, comma, your first name, today's date, and the class color. Number 1 says complete the table by using y equals negative 1/4 x minus 3. So this formula you probably have never been exposed to in 7th grade. Maybe you have. But it's y equals mx plus b. This is called the point slope formula. So you can write somewhere on here point slope formula. And the name of the formula gives you the obvious tools that you have. It gives you a point, it tells you the slope, and it's a formula or an equation, point slope formula. The graph that you see on number 1 is called an input-output table. So this right here is called the input-output table. So input, and then the result is an output. Input-output table. So they give you an equation in the form of y equals mx plus b. Y equals mx plus b. They give you this equation that's already in the point slope formula. The slope is going, once it's solved, you have y on the left equals mx, or a number with an x, plus or minus another number, which would be the b. So the m and the b represent numbers. I know you guys are used to saying those are hashtags, but that also means number. So the m has a number and the b has a number. If the equation is in the point slope form, we can just already see what the slope is and what the y-intercept is. The b is the y-intercept and the m is the slope. We're going to take formal notes on this. This is just an introduction to what you are required to do on this Quizzette. I'm actually going to work backwards. Instead of doing number 1, I'm going to do number 4 first. So everyone go to number 4. It says, from the equation y equals negative 1/4 x minus 3, what is the y-intercept and what is the slope? I told you that the slope is the m, or the number right in front of x. So the slope, m, would be negative 1/4. And then the y-intercept is this number. So if it's plus b, if it would have been plus 3, the y-intercept would have been positive 3. Since it's minus 3, the y-intercept is negative 3. So the y-intercept is negative 3. Your answer is not negative 3 for the y-intercept. You have to put it in point form, which is 0, comma, negative 3. So this would be your answer. Now let's look at number 3. It says, from the equation, which is the same equation you had in number 4, number 1, and number 2, what do you notice about the slope? Is the slope positive, negative, is there no slope, or is it undefined? If you look at the slope is m is equal to negative 1/4. Is it positive, negative? Is there no slope, as in 0, or is it undefined? It's kind of easy. It's negative. So that's the slope, and you could say the slope is negative. The reason I want you to recognize if the slope is positive, or if the slope is negative, or if the slope is 0, or if the slope is undefined, is because the line, I don't know if you remember about a week ago, I told you about slope. If you have a negative slope, your line is going to look like this. If you have a positive slope, it's going to look opposite of that. I'll write it in blue. This is a negative slope. If it was a positive slope, your line would look something like this. Right? And then if you had a 0 slope, your line would look like this. It would be a straight line through the y-axis. And then if it was undefined, it would be like this. A line like this would be undefined. And then over here, that would be 0 slope. Thank you for writing this out. You do have to draw these out. So now number 2 is asking us to graph the equation. Well, we already know our line is going to look something like a negative slope, which is something like this. Oops, sorry. It's going to look something like this. We just have to write it with precision now. Now we don't have any points to plot. So we can't do number 2 unless we do number 1. So we have our input-output table. We would input 0 for x into the equation to find out what the y-axis is, or what the y-intercept is. So let's do y equals negative 1/4 x minus 3. Write small, because it's going to get a little messy. That's the first step. Then the next step, instead of writing x, you're going to substitute this input value of 0. Y equals negative 1/4 times 0 minus 3. Anything times 0 is what? 0. So now you have y equals, this is 0, minus 3. 0 minus 3, that's just negative 3. So we have our first point, 0, comma, negative 3. According to our input-output table, every time you input 0 into the equation, you're going to get negative 3 as an output. So you have 0, comma, negative 3 for this one. Now we have to solve for an input value of 4. So y equals negative 1/4. Instead of putting x, we're going to substitute our input value of 4. You can even put a 1 under it if you want to make it easier. Minus 3. So remember, when you multiply fractions, it's not as difficult as it might seem. You just multiply the top numbers, and then you multiply the bottom numbers. So you just have to be careful with this negative right here. Remember that that's a negative. So let's put the negative on the 1. Negative 1 times 4 is negative 4. 4 times 1 is 4. And then remember, you have y equals, and then you have this minus 3. Negative 4 over 4, that's just negative 1 whole. So you have y equals negative 1 minus 3. This is just negative 1 right there. Remember, you can't subtract. You have to do the addition of the opposite. So you have negative 1 plus negative 3. That's equivalent to negative 1 plus negative 3. That's negative 4. So for an input value of 4, you have an output value of negative 4. That's your next point. By definition, we can already draw a line by plotting those 2 points on the graph. You just need 2 points, and then you can connect them, and that's your line. But number 1 on Tuesday is asking us for another input value. So let's do y equals negative 1/4. Instead of writing x, I'm going to write this negative 4. And I'm going to put a 1 under it because I can. Minus 3. So negative 1 times negative 4 is positive 4. Because a negative times a negative is positive. And then 4 times 1 is 4. Remember to write y equals, and then that minus 3. 4 over 4, that's just 1 whole. 4 divided by 4, which is just 1. So y equals 1 minus 3. Change that into addition of the opposite. You end up getting negative 2. So for an input value of negative 4, you have an output value of negative 2. All right, so now that you have 3 points, 0, comma, negative 3, 4, comma, negative 4, negative 4, comma, negative 2, you can plot those 3 points onto number 2, and then you can connect the line. So let's do 0, comma, negative 3. So 0 is right here, comma, negative 3 would be right here, where I'm pointing. You would put a point right there. So I'm going to put a point at 0, comma, negative 3. I'm going to do it in red. Okay, so I have the first point. The second point is 4, comma, negative 4. So I'm going to go to the x-axis at positive 4 and then go down to negative 4, which is right here. And then I have negative 4, negative 2. So I have negative 4 and negative 2. All right. Now I can connect those. And now that you're 8th graders, you have to know this, that you have to extend the line to the end of the graph. Okay, that doesn't look straight, but I'm trying to make it straight. Ugh. Try to make it as straight as possible. It's really hard for me to do this on this touch screen. Let me do it in a different color. I think it still looks the same. And every time we draw a line in math, we have to write the equation on top of it. So this is the equation, and we write y equals negative 1/4 x minus 3. I know it's probably hard to see. I'll try to write it a little bigger. Oh no, that's too much. What the heck is that? At least I could erase it, because sometimes it doesn't let me erase things. Okay, so we have y equals negative 1/4 x minus 3. And then you can check your slope. Your slope is negative 1/4. Now let's count. How many did I go up and over to get to my next point? And that's 1, negative 4. That matches. My slope would be negative 1/4. Done.